50 ounces per Bitcoin within the next year. This is my price call. People don't make price calls on gold, but I think within the next 12 months, 50 ounces of gold per Bitcoin would be a reasonable bull run. It's a way better measure of Bitcoin than dollars. People get salty no matter how you measure Bitcoin. And I think every person really on the planet is a Bitcoiner. They just don't know it yet. I don't necessarily debate people. I'm not interested in arguing, but I do like to share what I have learned and kind of help people to like conceptualize and shift their mind towards something that's going to be beneficial to them. I have this sort of mental image, this thought experiment of Satoshi sitting on a mountain in the Himalayas, like with a group of monks, and he just meditates all day long, and he's waiting for like a little boy, like a monk, to come up and be like, hey, so this Bitcoin thing is taking over the whole planet, you know? And then he walks down the mountain.
Hi, Sourcenode. How are you doing? Everything fine on your end?
Great, man. How are you doing?
Really, really good. It's been a pleasure. Like this past few days, almost weeks, it's been really positive in Bitcoin, and there's so many things happening. And you, when I wrote you, you'd instantly said like, "Oh, we have to talk about that," and I instantly loved it because we all compare Bitcoin towards like fiat denominated currencies, like usually the US dollar. Even outside of the US, it's usually the US dollar we compare Bitcoin towards. Even in German and Austrian meetups, we talk about the US dollar price of Bitcoin because that's like in the English speaking one, the big one. But you said like we have to talk about the gold Bitcoin price. Like, why is that?
Yeah, so dollars are a shitcoin. We all know that. And gold is also, it's a commodity. It has its own uses. It's good for electronics. People like it for jewelry. Maybe it's going to be helpful in space travel. Who knows? But it's a way better measure of Bitcoin than dollars. And people get salty no matter how you measure Bitcoin. They get upset when you measure it in dollars. They get upset when you measure it in gold. They get upset, about whatever. I can measure it in anything I want. I can measure it in pickles or bricks. It's all relative. And so I think that using gold is the best way to consider what is happening, because gold has been in charge for the last 5,000 years or something. We don't actually know, probably. And so this is the end of an era. Gold is getting repriced in Bitcoin. And I drew some stupid lines on my chart because sometimes they matter. And I know there are gold investors that are looking at this. Not all of them. A lot of boomers are like, oh, I'm too old for Bitcoin. That's not my thing. They're about to find out again that you can't ignore Bitcoin. The opportunity cost is too painful. And it looks like that triangle, if it means anything at all, Zodiac for Men, is ending in March of next year. So sometime before then, there's going to be a breakout in one direction or the other. My expectation is it's going to be an upward direction. So it's going to do what it's done before. And if you look at the gold priced in Bitcoin rather than Bitcoin priced in gold, the chart doesn't tell you the same story. It's like it's a devastating collapse, basically, which is exactly what this is. But it's a little harder to get a grasp on what it is. But the reason that gold matters is because the financial system as it exists today is a two-part system. You've got like the elite level, nation state sovereign level, Jeffrey Epstein's of the world, and then you've got everybody else. And those people, those high level financial elites, quote unquote, air quotes on financial elites. I don't think of them as elite. I think of them as basically they've inherited their positions, and many of them are not good people. They operate in a different world, and they're looking at gold as the measure of wealth, clearly, because gold has been ripping. And it takes a lot more money to move gold than it takes to move Bitcoin. Given the fact that people are losing faith in fiat currencies and moving to gold, I'm extremely bullish on Bitcoin. And as soon as there's even an inkling in that sort of echelon that Bitcoin is cheap, it's game over. It's going to go up multiples very quickly, in my opinion.
And it's super interesting because I told you this before, and I want to reiterate that measuring Bitcoin in something real that has real value, and like gold has value way beyond the monetary premium. So even if you say like, even if you go to the extent that Bitcoin will suck out all the financial and monetary premium out of gold, gold still has value in like jewelry, in smartphones, and like other use cases. So it is something tangible and real. So what is the best thing you can compare gold towards that is universal? No, Bitcoin towards that is universal. That is gold. And if you make, as I made that example before, when you compare Bitcoin towards fiat currency, I always get the comment of like, oh, but what about inflation? And they all are right. If you make a Bitcoin prediction of like, oh, we're going in 10 years to $5 million, you might be right, you might not be right, but the only thing is, it's only a question of time till you're right, because those fiat
Yes,
currencies
exactly.
only are devaluing over time. So you might be wrong in the timing, but you probably are right with the measurement. Because if fiat currencies do what they always do, as Lynn Olin says, like nothing stops this train. Like
Right.
every price prediction at some point will be true for Bitcoin in fiat currencies.
Right. Yeah, it's a broken ruler. It's like using a ruler that changes its shape and size to build a house. You can't. Truthfully, it's the same with any currency, Bitcoin as well, except my ruler is changing in my favor constantly.
How do you actually look? Because I personally thought like gold is like, first I thought gold might be like even the first one to really fall. And I always saw gold as the main competitor. But now we see that like bonds, for example, like they really fall a lot, and nobody is saving in there. And Jesse Myers made that like sizable chart of like how big every asset is. And he recently made a comparison from his 2023 to 2025. And a small summary, like gold and Bitcoin went up greatly within that 2-year period, and bonds on a relative term lost, I think, 6 or 7%, and then money, his big category money, I think lost 3 or 4%. I could be wrong on the exact number, something like that. Real estate won a little bit, and equities won a little bit, but gold got up like, I don't know, I think 60 or 70%. And then Bitcoin went up like, I don't know, 300 or 400%, like a huge amount of numbers. So it's kind of showing weak currencies are kind of getting devalued over time, and then like hard currencies or hard assets getting really strong over time. And I'm really grappling with that as like, what is the role of gold in a Bitcoin world? Does it fall to utility, or does it still have some like monetary premium because people just like to have physical things that they say like, oh, if the internet is falling out, I have some like emergency coin or whatever?
Yeah, sometimes I visualize what different regions in the world are going to do under a Bitcoin standard. It could be that certain regions really don't have electricity or internet for extended periods of time. They may go back to a metallic standard. I'm not against that. I think that those people will continuously lose purchasing power against people that have Bitcoin. So anybody who comes in with Bitcoin, if they're not actively keeping Bitcoiners out, they will just be able to buy everything from them. So I don't know how that would work exactly. I honestly don't think that it would work. Yeah. I don't know if gold will fall all the way to utility value, because some people are always going to want to use it to coat the insides of their temples or whatever, I guess that's utility as well. It's utility for ornamentation, but it's going to fall dramatically against Bitcoin. And what I'm thinking about right now is like 50 ounces per Bitcoin within the next year. This is my price call. People don't make price calls on gold, but I think within the next 12 months, 50 ounces of gold per Bitcoin would be a reasonable bull run.
And it's so interesting because like it doesn't really mean anything for me. Like 50 ounces, like I have to like visualize that.
You gotta
And
hold
people
it.
are like, if you say like, oh, 2 million or like 1 million, you're like, I know it. But like 50 ounces, because we're so unused to measuring things in gold. It's like, oh, wait, what does this even mean? Like 50 ounces in gold per Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I saw an ad recently that said you could get a certain amount of gold. It was in the Times of India. They posted a thing said this is how much gold you can buy with Bitcoin now. It was much more than that. It was like a kilogram, but we're not there yet. I don't know. I'd have to. Well, I guess we're getting there. I don't know. I'd have to look. It fluctuates every day.
Yeah, the Times of India. Oh gosh, maybe I can pull it up because I saw that
You
one.
saw it, yeah. It definitely circulated for a minute. I forgot who put out the ad. It was a clever ad. It's a
A really
paradigm
good
shift.
one.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially,
Yeah,
I just want to say, especially in India, because they love the gold there.
yeah. Yeah, the shift that it takes to mentally measure the world in Bitcoin is kind of similar to what it takes when you go to another country and you're measuring, like if I go to Thailand and I'm measuring in baht, or if I'm going to Costa Rica and it's colones, it's like everywhere I go, I'm doing an instant conversion in my head of how much things cost. And you can do the same thing with just about any commodity, or I can do it with Bitcoin, I can do it with gold. It's just a matter of doing the conversions. So I think in a way, probably people that have traveled a bit and used other fiat currencies might have an easier time understanding Bitcoin as a unit of account.
We have now so many, like if you think about who's holding a lot of gold, it's like central bankers and governments, like those are holding a lot of gold. What do you think? Like now we're already seeing like slowly, I think Luxembourg, like a very small country here in the EU, is now putting 1% of the sovereign wealth fund into Bitcoin. We have, of course, like US holds some Bitcoin, but they didn't buy it. There's other states that hold some Bitcoin, but they didn't really buy it. So I don't know if this counts even. Do you see that the central bankers and like governments really dust their gold and like slowly buy Bitcoin? If they are smart and see kind of the same thing that we are doing, it's kind of like weird because it's like they want to cling on the power. They are not stupid. It's almost like something they have to do at some point.
The guys that are running the show right now are really old and they do not understand computers or Bitcoin. And they do understand gold, and they see gold as a trustless money that they can use to secure their power. But what I always fall back on is, at what point is a Bitcoiner that has hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of coins going to want to buy a tremendous amount of gold? It's just not going to happen. It's really not a good trade. If you understand where Bitcoin's headed, you realize that holding a bunch of gold is a bad idea. But a vast majority of people that buy gold, they're thinking backwards. They're thinking the power grid's going to go down. There's going to be a global EMP. There's going to be a polarity switch between whatever, or they think that Bitcoin's going to fail. And I think they're just going to get blindsided. And many of them understand the problem of central banking, the Federal Reserve, the military industrial complex, all of this. I mean, I love gold bugs because they understand, they're so based in when it comes to understanding the problem. And then when I start to talk about Bitcoin, their eyes just glaze over, like they're not willing to do the research. They don't understand what absolute finite means, you know?
I guess it's the same thing with disruptors and innovators and the incumbent system where they kind of don't see the new thing coming.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a
It's like
huge age gap. There's an inequality gap in the age of who's holding wealth at the moment. The boomers, they've kind of given up on Bitcoin. They don't see it. It's gonna sneak up on them. It's like a really old wrestler who thinks he's still the shit, and somebody else comes in that's been like training jujitsu in Brazil for 20 years, and he's like smokes him.
I mean, there are some. There's Bob Burnett, I think I might get the ages wrong, but I think he calls himself the Bitcoin boomer himself. So I guess he's a boomer. I don't know Larry Lepar, if they are
Oh,
all
Larry's the
boomers.
best. Yeah, I just started The Big Print, man. The Big Print is a fantastic book. I didn't think that any more good Bitcoin books were going to come out, and The Big Print is awesome. I'm maybe 15% of the way through it.
Yeah, it's a really, really good book. And it's actually, I asked the Twitter community, hey, I want to orange pill my girlfriend, and she's getting more and more ready. Like, she already saves most of her money in Bitcoin.
Nice.
And she was at Bitcoin Prague with me, and she talked with all the Bitcoiners there, and she really loved it. Like, she really gets the vibe of it. And she hears so many Bitcoin podcasts through me indirectly. She has the lingo down. It's so funny. She understands the lingo in the community better because of me than the actual Bitcoin. And so I asked the community, hey, like, she's interested. She already saves in it, and she wants to dive deeper now. What is the best book? And I think 80% of people said, go to the Big Print. Like, they all said, like, start with that book. Like, that's the perfect first start if you're interested in it and want to dive deeper. And I kind of was like, oh, I thought the Bitcoin Standard comes up more. I'm probably biased because this was my first Bitcoin book, but a lot of people actually say, oh, like, this is kind of heavier read. The Big Print is a lot better, I think, for like starters to get into Bitcoin.
Nice. So first of all, goals on the girlfriend with the Bitcoin. That's cool. Also, yeah, I've spent the last 5 years orange pilling people. And so I read all the books so that I could orient people towards the right books. And there's 3 or 4 that I recommend to people. I like The Seventh Property by Eric Yakes. That's a really good book. A lot of people don't talk about it, but it's good. And the Bitcoin Standard is good for gold bugs and conservatives, but it's not good for people that are not oriented towards Austrian economics already. There's some parts of it that are a little tough. Seyfedin went off on this rant about modern art. It's like totally not necessary. I love Seyfedin. And then The Price of Tomorrow. If somebody's not ready for Bitcoin, but they do want to understand what's going on in the economy, Price of Tomorrow is like hands down. I recommend that all the time. It's not a long book. It's so good. And then I also wanted to bring up the Genesis book by Aaron von Beerdam. The Genesis book is maybe my favorite Bitcoin book, but it's interesting to me. It's not something I would necessarily recommend to everybody. I just really enjoyed the deep dive into the cypherpunk movement leading up to Bitcoin's invention. So for a more technical person, I think that's a good book. So it's like whoever you're talking to, it depends. But for your girlfriend, yeah, The Big Print makes perfect sense. I get it because it's like it's not too heady, it's not too technical, it's very down to earth.
And I think it also resonates nicely because he's also coming from a gold from a gold background, and she's Indian, and that's why I also said, like, I know, like, I always knew that Indians are kind of big on gold, but with her telling me all the stories, I really now know, like, they are huge on gold. Like, in the marriages, like, you give gold to the other family, and not a small amount of gold, like huge amounts of gold, more than any Indian family actually should give because they're not that rich. And it has everywhere. And like, when I hear stories like her mom saying, like, if it's not gold, it's not worth anything. I'm like, they're so ready for Bitcoin. They're so ready. I think how many billions of people are the Indians? 1.5, like, I have no clue. But they all, I think, are ready for Bitcoin. I feel like there's a huge untapped potential because if they understand gold on such a mainstream area, where in Europe, it's just not the same case. In Europe, gold is just not that well understood from like a intrinsic value perspective.
Right. Interesting. I didn't know that about the Indians. So whose family gifts the gold? Is it the man's family? Are you gonna have to is something you're worried about?
No, actually,
You get the gold.
yeah, like, the the girl, like if you get a girl, you have to give the guy the gold. You have to give the guy the money, and in return, you give the gold. So it's a complicated thing. But basically this is also, and that's a whole nother discussion now. But India is in a lot of regards still in another century when we compare it to Austria or like America or any of these things. Because for a family, having a girl, the marriage is so much more expensive. A lot of them actually want to have a boy. It's still very much into the Indian roots that they kind of root for having a boy. And then I'm very sorry if I misrepresent India at any point. That's just like my very small subjective things that I get from my girlfriend when she tells me stories. And so I got to know a lot of those different kind of things where they are very conservative still, saying like the girl belongs to the family till she has married, and then she's kind of almost out of the family and transfers to the other family. She belongs now to the other family, which is not like there's a lot of things that I'm like, oh wow, that feels like Austria just like 100 years ago. Like if I hear stories from how my mom or my granddad tells me about marriage and like how they got together, it's very much how I see it now in India. And there's a lot of difference in India. India is a huge country. So if you talk with someone that is in New Delhi, it's very different if you talk with someone that is kind of on the countryside of India. So there's a lot of nuance in there. And she comes more from the countryside. Even the village is bigger than the biggest city in Austria. It's really interesting to see. And maybe that's why also gold is still heavier there, because fiat currency in the modern system is also not yet like as fully integrated in their systems. And I think more on the countryside, they are way more open to gold now. Now they all say Bitcoin is a scam. So they haven't really like made that bridge. But that's why I'm feeling the Indians are more ready for Bitcoin than I see the Europeans being ready for Bitcoin. I don't know what the adoption numbers are there. I have no insights there, but I just feel like from a cultural perspective, like they're so ready for it.
Oh, it's very interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of like how in Africa they went from dirt roads to cell phones. They didn't have all the in between. Staying in a more, I don't know, primitive is not the right word, but like an earlier stage in the human development process has its benefits because they didn't have to go through a lot of the sort of rough learning curve of the Industrial Revolution and the fiat printing press and all these things that ultimately propelled us forward, but also caused a huge mess.
Now, you mentioned the Genesis book before also, and it's the only book you mentioned that I haven't heard actually from. You mentioned the Sovereign Individual at one point, like all other books that you also mentioned. The Seventh Property, I also found it really interesting. I had Eric Yakes on my podcast already 2 times. I think the last time was a week ago even, something like that. But Genesis book, I actually never heard about it. Like what is the general story there, and like what kind of have you learned from the book?
Okay, so this is what Aaron did that nobody else has done as far as I've seen. He really framed up the understanding of what was going on in the cypherpunk movement, how the cypherpunk movement started, and how it progressed, and all the attempts to create a digital currency that happened before Bitcoin. And then he laid out why Satoshi's solution was as unique as it was. And the most fascinating thing about the whole book, in my opinion, is right near the end, he talks about all the people that were in the cypherpunk community that didn't understand the white paper. There were so many people that were basically they'd become blackpilled. Like they just didn't think that any digital currency was going to win. And then this guy, Satoshi, with no reputation, came out of nowhere. And they're like, yeah, another digital gold, great idea. Like it's not going to work. And based on their assumptions, like they didn't really look into the technology. So based on their assumptions about how it functioned, they said it was going to fail, but they didn't understand the difficulty adjustment. And the difficulty adjustment is just as important as the blockchain. It's just as important as proof of work. People miss this all the time because it doesn't sound as important. But when you understand how mining functions and how all the transactions are collated, it's very critical. And also another piece I didn't know about that he put into the book is about how Satoshi made the Genesis block so that you couldn't use the coins. There's 50 coins tied into the Genesis block that because of the way that Bitcoin is coded, they can never move because there isn't a predetermined coin base or something. I don't know the technical reason, but he did that because that's the only fair way to do it. So it really speaks to Satoshi's ethics. Like he really did not want even one block advantage over the rest of the market. Like that's amazing, you know?
That's really like interesting because like when you think about this, and I think a lot about like what Satoshi actually knew and how much if he would have looked down now at Bitcoin and sees kind of where it is right now, if he would have seen everything, how to what extent did he already see what Bitcoin is already now? And then I'm like, oh gosh, like it's such a huge insight from so many angles to do something like that. And then if he would have understood everything, what huge sacrifice, like how granularly he already thought that this first block cannot be distributed to him. Like this, it has to stay there. Like that's huge for me.
Right. I have this sort of mental image, this thought experiment of Satoshi sitting on a mountain in the Himalayas, like with a group of monks, and he just meditates all day long. And he's waiting for like a little boy, like a monk, to come up and be like, "Hey, so this Bitcoin thing is taking over the whole planet," you know? And then he walks down the mountain. This is sort of like my own idea of what he might be doing. Because if you were in the mountains, you wouldn't have any idea. Like you wouldn't know the price. Nobody has any technology. But one day, if the thing's successful, the whole world is going to know. Like everything's changed.
That's the nicest story I've ever heard of like what Satoshi Nakamoto might do just now.
It's just what I like to think about. It's just my own projection, you know.
Because if you think about it, this would be the best thing ever. And this would also explain, like, if he's still alive, how he can stay silent. Because seeing everything what Bitcoin went through with your own baby, like if you invent something, if you create something, it's like a baby. You want to see it and you kind of want to, if it goes in the wrong direction, you kind of want to steer it. Like this is just very human to do. So for someone to create that and just go away and still look at it every single day, that would be inhuman.
You're right. Yeah.
And so like him being somewhere meditating makes a lot of sense actually.
Yeah, him in a orange robe, like super ripped, just walking down out of the mountains. Yeah, it's a good image.
Did he get the like? I haven't delved into it, but is the orange? Did this skin after him, or did it come with him? Because I think the first logo was even gold, right?
Yeah, you're probably right. I have no idea, but the monks wear orange robes, so that's what's in my head.
Awesome. I mean, I wanted to ask you this: if you read this book and dove deeper in this, is how much of this cypherpunk movement is still in the Bitcoin community? It seems like the Bitcoin community grew up a lot and is so big now and has so many different compartments. So it's like hard to like talk about their Bitcoin community. But if you would have seen the community now and seen like with the Genesis book, you probably get like a good glance of like what the cypherpunk movement also was. I haven't read it, but like this is what I would have imagined. How cypherpunk like are we still?
How cypherpunk are we still on Twitter or on Nostr? That's the difference. I think that the cypherpunks are alive and well on Nostr, and on Twitter it's like a bunch of MicroStrategy fans. And honestly I can't really say that for sure because I haven't been on Twitter since it was called Twitter. I've been Nostr only for that whole time, so I don't really know. It's not easy for me to tell. When I go to the Prague conference, there's a big cypherpunk vibe there. There's a lot of people that are like no KYC, peer to peer. But there are people building tools right now to make eCash and federations a thing. And I think in a lot of ways the ethos has shifted. In some ways, I think that's bad. In other ways, I think that's good. The original cypherpunks were transhumanists. They called themselves exo something. I forgot. They're Xterra or something. That's not it. But yeah, transhumanism freaks me out personally. I mean, I do like the idea of being able to download a language into my brain, but at the same time, integrating with a computer, I'm very skeptical of that. However, if you're thinking about it in terms of open source tech and code that you can verify, it does have a very different appeal to it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think every person really on the planet is a Bitcoiner. They just don't know it yet because they're going to need Bitcoin. It's like, are you a person that uses phones? Are you being a Bitcoiner is not going to be a thing at some point. It's just going to be what people do.
That's why I also think the Bitcoin podcast world will have an end at some point because Bitcoin just won't be something people will talk about. Just like it's a boring thing to talk about. It's like, I mean, phones might be a bad. So now we have a podcast that might be on like new tech and like the stack layer of like, oh, there's a new phone coming out. But a Bitcoin podcast right now is on the fundamental technology of Bitcoin and not a new tech stack that is on top of Bitcoin. So phones might be like a kind of a weird comparison now, but I stick with the comparison for this one. It's like having in 2025 a podcast that advertises that you should have a phone. Like it's like, oh yeah, like 2025, get one phone. like nobody does that because everyone already has a phone. I mean, of course, there are like billions of people that don't have a phone on the world, but it's not because they don't want it. It's because they can't have a phone. At least there are more people with a phone than with a bank account. It's always an interesting statistic. And so I think this is also why Bitcoin podcasts kind of have like a lifetime and they have to kind of progress to something else.
Yeah, well, in the same way that every individual is a pre-coiner, every podcast is also a pre-Bitcoin podcast. They're all going to integrate with the network at some point. But then the people that are specifically focused on Bitcoin, like Preston Pish just pivoted to a broader AI topic, or just technology in general. And I think that's great. At a certain point, you reach this crest with Bitcoin information and you're like, okay, I have enough information. I've spread as much information as I can. I want to pursue my personal interest on top of Bitcoin. It's a layer one, and then your interests build on top of that. So like for me personally, my interests are spirituality, philosophy, comparative religion, all these things. And it took me a while to get out of the economics and Bitcoin zone. I still research it all the time. I mean, I read 2 Bitcoin books recently. But I'm also adding on all this other stuff, you know? And so it's good to just kind of like fluidly weave all that together. It's all one thing in the end of the day.
This is, I think, the best orange pilling we can do. If you are a podcaster that, let's say, solely focuses on AI and people really trust you and you have a huge audience in there, you just talking about AI and making AI podcasts. And then people just know that you're a Bitcoiner and you mentioned that like, oh yeah, I like Bitcoin. Yeah, of course I save all my money in Bitcoin. That's indirectly the best orange pill you can do because you are not, if you're a Bitcoin podcaster and you talk great about Bitcoin, it's like a salesperson of a company saying like, hey, our product is really good. And so having someone that is on authority of something completely else that has nothing to do with Bitcoin, and he's just saying like, of course I save all my money in Bitcoin. It's like a doctor that says to you like, oh, I have nothing to do with the Bitcoin community, but I save all my money in Bitcoin. It's like, this is indirectly actually, I think, almost a better orange pilling than a Bitcoin podcaster telling you that Bitcoin is great. Bitcoin podcast is more like for the people that want to learn something and want to dive deeper and not to like get the first people interested in it.
Right. Yeah. I was watching a YouTube video about Prospera. It's this town in Nicaragua that's being set up. It's like a sovereign citadel type vibe. And somewhere just in passing, they're like, yeah, we use Bitcoin here. And like they had a Bitcoin ATM. They're like, you can buy Bitcoin here and you can use it. All our vendors accept Bitcoin. And it was like it was such an obvious statement to them and to me. But a lot of other people were like, huh, what, just Bitcoin? Oh, interesting, and that's how it starts. I've been going on some non-Bitcoin podcasts recently. I've been on like 3 in the last year or something, and I really enjoy that because I like people asking me questions and getting into it, because that's what I do. Like I don't necessarily debate people. I'm not interested in arguing, but I do like to share what I have learned and kind of help people to like conceptualize and shift their mind towards something that's going to be beneficial to them.
Yeah, being as a Bitcoiner on another podcast hits very differently. It's like a whole different experience.
Right.
And the questions and the discussions you have with them are very different, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I recently started doing jujitsu. And when I'm getting thrown around on the mat by somebody who's been training for like 6 months more than me, that's kind of like the reverse feeling of like when I'm talking to somebody that doesn't understand Bitcoin. It's like, oh, this is like counterintuitive, and I'm just getting my face wiped across the ground. And now I kind of know what it's like. I've been researching Bitcoin for 10 years or whatever, and I'm talking to somebody else, and I'm just like, oh yeah, they're going to go over here. They're going to go towards quantum computing, or they're going to go towards, oh, it's wasteful for energy, or they're going to go towards, well, let's go back to a barter system or whatever. It's like all the common arguments. It was like, yeah, I've seen all of these. We can. It's just about staying calm and like going through the motions,
The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC-free Bitcoin. That's why I use simplemining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean. No account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io. Tell them you come from Robin and let's mine Bitcoin together. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need.
Yeah, and you mentioned it before, that the difficulty adjustment. I think this is actually something that a lot of the people that bring up that environment argument of like it's wasteful, a lot of them actually don't get the difficulty adjustment because they just like make the assumption that of what it does now and what if like more come in and all of that. And even in some studies, when they made these claims, I don't know what claims it was, like one transaction will burn such and such energy, like it makes like all these weird arguments. We actually had, I forgot his name. Super sorry. We had someone on that is really an authority in that space, and we went through all the studies, and he showed that they purposely left out difficulty adjustment, and it was like marked as like, hey, that's missing. And then the original guy even said like, oh yeah, super sorry, we missed that one. But the thing is, all the newspapers and media articles were already written and already in all the minds, and nobody like made any correction on that. Because the difficulty adjustment was later, like all the calculations they've done were correct outside that they missed the difficulty adjustment. And it's like, yeah, it's a pretty big thing to miss if you write an article on Bitcoin and then especially the energy consumption.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, people come in to assess Bitcoin with motivated reasoning, and they want to confirm their own bias against it. And that's the problem. I had a coworker that used to say this all the time. He said, it's not what you don't know that hurts you. It's what you think you know that's wrong. It's your assumptions. That's what hurts you. Socrates said the same thing. He said, both of us are fools, but I'm the wiser because I know that I don't know anything.
I love that.
Yeah.
How are you actually thinking about the energy grid and the Bitcoin mining sphere in general? The environmental aspect is so interesting for me in Bitcoin.
So I haven't looked into environmental impact at all because I'm not worried about it, because anything that's wasteful is inherently not cost efficient. We're going to move towards nuclear. It's happening. I'm super bullish on nuclear, and it can be done safely, and it can be done in these micro nuclear setups. And I know that because I'm a Bitcoiner, right? Like I'm in on the energy grid system. I studied psychology. Why do I know about the energy grid? Because I'm a Bitcoiner. So Bitcoiners in general, the experience and the knowledge that we have just across the board, like I've never worked in mining, but the number of Bitcoiners that have worked in mining understand the energy grid in a way that normal people do not. And in fact, I would guess we're getting to the point where a lot of Bitcoiners understand the energy grid much better than many of the incumbent businesses that are operating in their small regions, because they're looking at the global energy grid in a Buckminster Fuller kind of fashion. They're thinking, okay, where's the arbitrage? Where are we finding cheap energy? Where's the energy expensive? How do we move the cheap energy to the expensive areas and vice versa? And they're looking at balancing the grid. And those tools are so underrated. Henry Ford in 1921, there's a news article. I've only seen the headline, but it said Ford would replace gold with an energy-backed currency to stop global wars in 1921. I mean, the roots of this movement are way deeper than most people realize at first glance. And energy currency replacing gold to stop wars. I mean, the whole thing that's more than 100 years old now. So yeah, I see it. The people that understand the grid and operate the grid are running this whole show right now. They're running this. I mean, everything that we do requires energy.
I think Bitcoin miners are really, and they're already starting to do that a little bit, but they will be huge energy producers because they will run at limits at some point and say like, oh, we need to get in the energy producing game. Like we have to really we need to be producing energy and consuming it and maybe get some rates going. And this is something that, I think Christian was his name, from Brains. He was on like a couple of weeks ago. He mentioned that Bitcoin miners moving towards an energy producer, like being an energy producer, is just a matter of time, because they have to be independent, and they kind of are doing that. So, and the way I'm thinking about it is like, if you're an energy producer right now and you don't see the potential of Bitcoin mining, eventually you will be bought out by someone that actually sees that opportunity.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was just thinking. I don't know the mining industry that well. It's not my forte, but I do understand business, and I know that any Bitcoin miner that is storing Bitcoin on their balance sheet is going to end up buying the energy producers, because the energy producers are not buying Bitcoin. There's lots of miners that are just popping up, being successful for a short period of time and then failing. And basically, I think any Bitcoin miner that's not storing Bitcoin on their balance sheet will be one of those. But the other ones, they will end up purchasing the grids in various places.
Interesting. I have one more kind of topic that's I think is interesting with you to talk about. It kind of goes into the sovereign individual thesis that we talked about before the podcast started. And I noticed now that there's a lot more smaller companies, a lot more freelance companies. Then there is remote work in general, like just also like working for a big company, but remote, even for like a smaller company working remote. And then there's AI, which makes it even easier to be productive as a sole company or as a company as like 2-3 people maybe, with freelancers. And then on top of all of that, we also then have borderless kind of money with Bitcoin. Are we just seeing the sovereign individual thesis like playing out in real time right now?
We are definitely seeing the sovereign individual thesis play out in real time. I have some concerns about that book, Peter Thiel being the primary one, but yeah, Palantir is a concern. But the sovereign individual thesis is accurate. I haven't been able to figure out how it's not accurate, except in the context of my own personal life, in the sense that I would like to purchase land, work with the land in a permaculture sense. You can't do that if you're like doing tax arbitrage all the time and like dodging around and leaving different countries and stuff. And the other potential problem with that thesis is that if you keep leaving one tax jurisdiction for another, yes, they're going to have a brain drain. They're going to have a tax-based drain. But you basically just keep running away from the bully. So at some point, you have to put your foot down and say, no, I don't consent, and I'm staying here. Like, I'm standing my ground, and I don't consent to this. This is unreasonable, and it's illegal, right, based on the Constitution. So we have that in the U.S., the rest of the world seems to be getting cucked to one speed or another. But as far as the like small companies taking over the world, Tether is, I don't know how many employees they have, but the whole world is learning right now like what can be done with a few hundred people. Vizio, the company that makes TVs, are another one, and they just outsource everything. They do the design in-house, they outsource. It makes perfect sense for everybody to be kind of on contract work. This is something that I've seen coming even before I read that book. We were talking about it in my grad program. I studied IO Psych, which is industrial psych, and they were talking about globalization, telecommuting, and contract work being the norm. And that was well before COVID. And so the trends were in place. They're just being accelerated. And that's what people are getting used to. Millennials are asking for that now. They're like, no, I don't want to work in an office, and there's really no point. It's becoming less and less relevant depending on your business and your enterprise,
Yeah, I feel like when you have a small startup and you're trying to get something off the ground, it might be beneficial for you, 2, 3, 4 people to be like in one room and like for the thing to work in the best possible way. But beyond that, outside of like lab work or something that you have to just do on site, and you cannot just take it with you at home. I want to pull it up because like it's really fascinating with Tether how many employees they have. And this is from 2024. It's not that different in 2025. In 2024, Tether generated $14 billion in profits, not revenue, profits, with only 150 employees. That's an equivalent of 93 million per employee in profits, not revenue. Like that, I have to say that one more time. Profits, not revenue. That's astonishing. Like that will be studied.
For sure. They're not even that big yet compared to the addressable market that they're sitting on. So, I mean, it's crazy. I'm not a pro Tether person. I've never used Tether. I've listened to Paulo on some podcasts and I thought he sounded really good. But I don't know. I know that there was some kind of shadiness in the beginning of the founding of the company with Brock Pierce and stuff. I've listened to Whitney Webb and all the black-pilled folks that like to scream that the sky's falling, but I'm not real worried about it at the moment.
Why did you say that you're concerned about Palantir?
Oh, because they're basically a private branch of the CIA, and they are designed to spy on everybody, and they're named after this, like, I haven't read Tolkien yet, but like as I understand it, they're named after like one of the bad guys in Tolkien, which is and also what's his name? The CEO. He said some things that I found very concerning. What was his name? I forgot. Anyway, I heard him say like
Alex Karp.
Alex Karp, yeah. We're only safe when the other guys are scared. I was like, that sounds like something a 7-year-old would say. That's like, this guy shouldn't be in charge of anything important, let alone my data or like any defense stuff. I don't think that people being scared makes me safer. Actually, I think that's just like a very precarious version of safety. It's not peaceful safety for sure. When I think about safety, I think about peace, and real peace requires cooperation as well as defense. So that's the way I see it.
And by the way, I'm soon, I have no clue about Tether. I just use Bitcoin. I never researched the company, but I will be soon at a conference they're hosting in Lugano, the Plan B conference. And it's the first one where I'm like, hey, like, kind of like I don't want to say shitcoin company, but like they're definitely not a Bitcoin company because they have Tether. And so it will be my first conference there where I'm like, oh yeah, like that's very clear, like not a Bitcoin conference, but it's actually a Bitcoin conference. And I'm kind of looking forward to it. So many people, like I wouldn't go there if not so many Bitcoiners talk so good about it. Like so many Bitcoiners say like, oh, Lugano is amazing, Plan B is amazing. But then I'm like, but it's Tether, right?
I've heard great things about Lugano. I didn't know that Tether ran that conference. When is it?
It is, I think, in 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks in Switzerland. End of October, I think 24th or something like that. Like, I should know it because I'm there, but like something like that.
Maybe next year, because I just heard about 2 conferences that I want to go to in October in Europe, but it's October, so I'm not ready to just drop everything and go.
Is BTC Balkans the other one?
The other one is the Free Cities Conference in Prague. It's not a Bitcoin conference, but Free Cities.
Oh, Free Cities. Yeah. They're always at Bitcoin Prague, I think also. I think I spoke with those guys.
Yeah. My friend Susanna told me about it just now, and it's like 4 weeks away or something. Or 3 weeks away. I'd like to go, but it's just not going to work this year.
Yeah, this is 24th to 25th. This is Lugano. So that was that will be fun to go towards.
Yeah. I could go to both, but it's just I'd have to ditch out on a bunch of obligations I already made, so I'm not going. I don't do that.
I think they will be there again in next year of Switzerland. And they are, in case you want to go there, I think they are in end of January in El Salvador also. Like if I'm not fully sure, but I think in El Salvador, end of January, they are also like if you want to visit the Plan B conference.
Yeah, I mostly go to conferences to visit friends, and I have several friends that live in Switzerland, so that would be the main reasoning. For the Free Cities conference, I'd just be interested to go to a non-Bitcoin conference that's Bitcoin adjacent and meet all these people, because I think that Citadel theory is going to take off over the next 10, 20 years. It'd be nice to meet some of them on the ground floor, you know.
One interesting aspect that I wanted to touch on that we said about the sovereign individual theory that's interesting, because I think, as you described, like we have to stand our ground, and I also thought about that a lot. Should I move out of the European Union? And currently I'm saying no. I reserve my right to change my mind on this one. But the main reason I feel like I will be fine in Austria is because I see the trend from people moving out of Austria and Germany. And so I hope, I might be naive. I might be stupid to think that, but I hope that long-term governments get it, that people are moving away from your jurisdiction very easily if you don't provide a great thing. And even it's the reverse effect, that you have to actually attract the best talent. And I think the European Union is kind of still in a fantasy world, because like they think, oh, Europe is the best place to be at, and everyone wants to come here. And in some live cases, that this might be the case. Like the great food here, and like the culture is amazing. Like I love Europe for a lot of things. But there are a lot of bad things also happening in the European Union, and especially also in Europe. And so I just have that weird belief and that weird hope that within the next 20 years, it gets a lot better, because they see the forces at play. And one of the things that I base that on is that I see when there are bad things happening from the European Union, that I see actually big, powerful parties within Europe that are sometimes number one or sometimes number two, really screaming. One small thing that I also liked that was going in the right direction is the EU chat control. They kind of got now not completely thrown out. It still had a chance, but like the first vote kind of got a no, and Germany stayed their ground and said like no towards it, which I love, because that would if all the countries would have said yes, that would have been a very big negative red flag for me for the European Union. But now that Germany or like Austria and like many of the countries said like she no to it, it's one of the things that I'm like, oh yeah, maybe we have hope. But I watch very closely, and I'm gone tomorrow if needed. Like I all my things, like there's a white wall behind me, and I can work wherever I have a white wall behind me. Like I don't care.
I love that. Yeah, you're ready to go. That's the right attitude. What was the control you mentioned that changed or didn't change?
I didn't change. It was something they planned, and it didn't get through. I can pull it up on Twitter.
Did it have to do with technology, or what was it?
Wanted to kind of
was it freedom of speech?
They wanted to see inside of our messaging apps.
They wanted to break the encryption. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Like that. Yeah. That's what I'm getting towards. EU chat control. I think it's probably so popular that even the bad Twitter search. Yeah, exactly. If for people that want to see more about it, there is even a website. Yeah, this is the right screen. My messages in case they don't want to.
It's all those pretty girls in your DMs, dude.
Wait, how can I do that? Actually, do not show my DMs. Wait.
We don't have to get super into it, but it's good that they turn that down. I mean, I could spin it good the other way too. If they did turn it down, it would just accelerate the collapse, because you can't live without encryption. I don't know what the implications would be if they did that. Yeah, businesses,
Okay.
politicians, everybody needs encryption.
Here I have it without my DMs.
Okay.
I would happily show everyone my DMs, especially on Twitter, because it's like mostly just I message people, "Hey, do you want to be on my podcast?" And they're like, "Yeah, I want to be on your podcast."
Full transparency. That's good.
But I don't want to impose the same thing for for the people that I message. And this is basically what happens. So like if you want to get more, I guess chatcontrol.eu probably has a lot more things, and just like if you get that in. And Germany was kind of on the edge of it. And first, they thought that Germany will actually be in favor of it. And then there was a big push against that, and actually helped apparently that a lot of the MPs actually switched against that, and apparently it is stopped for now. But I researched a little bit, I asked with Croc and ChatGPT a little bit, and there's a lot of ways this can come back. So those are things that I'm like, I don't want that to see. I don't want to see that at all.
Right. Yeah. Well, I honestly, I don't want to see anyone have to leave their homeland, because especially because of political action. It happens all the time. In fact, probably a vast majority of migration that happens is because of local government action. Or in the case of the Middle East, it has to do with Israel. But it's tragic. I'd like to see people stay where they are, use their traditional clothing, their traditional food, their all these things, because that's what makes travel so much fun. You go to another place and it's like completely different from where you are, and people are living there peacefully. I went to Thailand on the Rite of Passage tour last year with Captain Sid, and that place hasn't had a war in a while. They had a little skirmish recently, I guess, with Cambodia, and they've had some stuff in the north with China over the years. Mostly, I think that was in the 50s. But you can tell there's like a calmness in that country because they're not shell shocked from going to war. It's noticeable, and of course, all the Soviet bloc countries, they have a different kind of trauma from having been oppressed by their own government and being absolutely terrified, rightfully so, of communism. And it's just tragic to see people that love their country considering that they want to leave, or they might need to, because of what some bureaucrats are considering doing and taking their freedoms away.
That's very true. And you want to kind of stand your ground. Like, you don't want to leave. Here's where you grew up. Here's where your friends most likely are. Here's where your family is. Here's where you kind of want to be long term. Like, I want to be living at least as a home base, as close as I possibly can to my family. Not only my own family, but like also my extended family. And I don't want to move because there's some weird regulation that I'm like disagreeing very strongly with, that I'm like, oh, I have to get out of here. Like, I don't feel like I'm safe anymore in my own country. And you probably saw Israel and Hamas and all of that. And there was one interview they did with a guy that said, I'm not leaving. And he was right kind of in Hamas in there. And I loved that interview so much. It was literally just like 1 minute, like the mainstream media of Austria, like asking him 2-3 questions, like, oh, why are you not leaving? Like, what is going on and what happened to your hometown? So like they first ask him like, oh, what kind of happened to your hometown? And then kind of like, oh, why are you still here? And he's like, I'm not abandoning my country. I'm not abandoning where I grew up, where my family is. And I love that so much. Like, he's clearly in a spot where you want to leave, where you want to get out of. But he's like, I'm staying here. And there's something like, you can make the argument of like, oh, like, get out of there. That's stupid. But you can make the argument like, oh, that's really brave. That's really like how you should behave. That's like soldier thing of like, I want to save my country and not run away from the fight.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to run away forever? It's endless. You just keep running away from the bully. I genuinely believe that the only reason there's any freedom left on the face of the planet is because American citizens are well armed. And I think that whatever happens here is going to ripple outward towards the rest of the world, because everybody, in one way or another, whether they love us or hate us, they're looking to the U.S. for guidance on what is acceptable, what's normal, what's popular, whatever the thing might be. And so, I think it's important not to run away from the U.S., even if that might not be in my personal self-interest. I mean, it might put me at risk. At the moment, I feel relatively safe. Being myself, there are lots of people in the U.S. that do not feel safe right now. And the common factor, no matter who's in office, is the size and power of the government, of course. And so, I've seen both sides upset at different times, and I'm just like, yeah, well, you just keep voting. So every time you vote, you're giving the government more power. Every time you pay taxes, you're giving the government more power. I'm hypocritical in saying that. Of course, I do pay taxes, but I don't know. That doesn't have to remain that way. We could change that.
One more thing I want to kind of get into with you. You mentioned it before, and I don't know what it is, so I kind of want to touch on it. Is the integral theory? What is that? Integral theory, yeah. So integral theory is a meta theory created by this guy named Ken Wilber, who's eccentric to say the least, but he's brilliant. And he took every other developmental model that he could find and put it together into one meta theory. And when I say developmental model, it starts with childhood, but then it proceeds upwards through the whole philosophical spectrum. And so I use it as a tool to inspect the different arguments that come from groups and from individuals. And you can use it internally. You can use it to look at a state level. You can use it to look at the country level. And so basically the main three categories that we're in at the moment, at least in the developed world, are the traditional level, which is like the very fundamentalist religious people. Then you have the modern industrial level, which is a very like cold, rational sort of atheistic view. Ayn Rand is a good representation of the modern. And then you have the postmodern, and the postmodern is sort of a breakdown of all meaning, and it enters into a realm of subjectivity, which is really uncomfortable for a lot of people. And what I've been noticing in studying this theory for longer than I've studied Bitcoin, I think I've been studying this for like 15 years, is that it encompasses everything. It's really, really comprehensive. There's some minor adjustments that need to be made here and there. I talk about it in my lecture series, the Holotropic Renaissance lecture series, for anybody who's interested. But basically, you've got the traditional, the modern, and the postmodern. They all have healthy representations, and they all have unhealthy representations. And what I've been doing in my own life recently is trying to integrate the traditional and the postmodern, which seems like an impossible task philosophically. And it is endless. I mean, you have to pick and choose in some ways. But what I've come to more recently is like the traditional can be way too hard-nosed in its black and white considerations of what's good and bad. It can become very narcissistic, like my worldview is the only correct worldview. Everything has to conform to my worldview. Postmodernists can do that too. You can have narcissists at any level, but the postmodernists are more like, well, we don't really know what the truth is. And that it's a good thing to be in a place of not knowing and deciding to sort of deconstruct systems of belief. But then it can be taken too far as well, right? Is these are the same people that are saying there's like a billion genders and all this. And so they can get too decoupled from reality. So these two forces are like pulling towards each other and away from each other at the same time.
And so it's like very, very complicated, but it gives me a lot of empathy for the people that I'm talking with. Because like I understand the progression of how I think, how other people think, and it's all progressing towards an understanding that each of these stages is necessary. Like you can't skip any of them. None of them are bad. None of them are inherently good. They are just the way that people progress, philosophically speaking. So, yeah, that's like a nutshell of integral theory. But again, the lecture series is a good deep dive if you're interested.
I love that, and I love those kind of snippets because that's actually mostly why I'm a big fan of podcasting, because sometimes they're not that good in diving very deep in something, but they're really good in getting small inspirations. So over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so that I listened to podcasts. I don't know when I started, but probably around 10 years ago. I've learned so much just by listening to conversations. And the best thing possibly that I learned through podcasting, or like not podcasting myself, but like listening to podcasts, is when I hear something, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then just take that and dive deeper. And maybe because the author maybe has written a book, then I'm like, oh, I can buy that book and dive deeper. Because yeah, I had a lot of offers where I read the book on my show, and I can always tell you like the things that you get from a 1-2 hour conversation from the author is very different to sitting down and reading his book. Reading his book is always deeper because like the book might be like 8 hours or 9 hours of reading, and the podcast is just like 1 or 2 hours. So like just from a math perspective, they have to go in different deep levels. And though that very thing is for me also one of the snippets where I'm like, oh, I have so many questions. I want to dive deeper in that. And then I was like, oh, I can take that and just like my inspiration happened right now, and I kind of dive deep into that. I've never said that on the podcast, and I was like, I want to make sure that's like somewhere in there, because that's literally for me the power of podcasts, taking snippets and getting inspired and like diving into new topics also.
Yeah, it's so true. I have really tried to split my time like 80-20, podcasts being the 20 and 80% being audiobooks, because the audiobooks are like really just, you know, you're getting into somebody's boiled down their life's knowledge into this tool for you to use. Many of them are not that useful, but many of them are. And so many books have changed my life in profound ways. And that's actually the kind of energy I tried to put into the lecture series when I made it. It is my life's work up to this point. I've got other projects. I'm working on writing a book. I've got another lecture series, or not a lecture series, but like a sort of an audio biography that I'm gonna probably start soon. We'll see. I'm tentative about it. It's a pretty personal project, but yeah, integral theory. The reason I talk about it is because I think it's a path towards resolving conflict. It's a path towards understanding each other in a way that is not. It's not as adversarial. It's more progress. It's more of a progress based viewpoint. I've really been enjoying the word protopian lately. I got that from Ben Woolsey. He wrote an article in Bitcoin Magazine about this. The protopian movement is like different from a utopian movement where you're progressing towards this perfect state. There is no perfect state. It's endless. And so the protopian movement is like, could be 1 step forward, 2 steps back, or no, the other way around. You want 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or you're just making a small amount of progress every day. It doesn't have to be these huge leaps and bounds. Every time you get into a utopian sort of mindset, you're dividing yourself away from nature, because nature is not a perfect clean slate. It never will be. You know, there's always going to be another leaf falls on your yard. You know, it's just a process of going forward, you know. So protopian has been, it's like a TikTok next block kind of vibe.
I love that. This is actually something that I take very serious. I've learned it with the podcast, because like if you start a podcast, you have like 1,000 things you can do better. And I now do the same thing with Microseed. Microseed is like a company that I got involved in pretty heavily and co-founded, but the original founder was Daniel. And it was interesting because we usually have like 2 or 3 meetings per week. And a lot of the discussions was like, oh, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this. And I'm always like, yeah, let's do that, but it's too early. Like we cannot do everything right now. Let's focus on like what we have and like make one small thing a little bit better. Let's fix let's see what is the most important thing, and work on that it's 2% better than it was yesterday and 2% better than the day before and everything like that. And, because especially if you have something running where other people also look at you, so like a podcast or like a company or anything public facing, you get a gazillion suggestions of what you should do and what you can do. And you're like, I cannot do everything. And so you're like, it's the constant grind of like just getting a little bit better every day. And I found myself, if I look too much at, oh, it should be exactly like that, I get depressed because I'm too far away from the utopian thing. I'm too far away of like, oh, I want it to be like that, but I'm still here. And so I have to make sure that I get the next step and the next step. And I know where I'm aiming, but I'm connected enough to reality that I'm saying like, yeah, this is not reality. Like I have to do like one small step ahead. Like right. I cannot compare myself to like the podcast that I want to be in 10 years. I have to compare myself to the podcast tomorrow, and how can I make tomorrow a little bit better?
Well, I wouldn't change anything about your podcast. I think your podcast is great.
Yeah, I guess the podcast just gets better with the guests teaching me more things.
Yeah, right. It's a process. It's the dialectic. We're all engaged in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. We have one question to ask each and every one of my returning guests, and you are already the 3rd time here. So you're a double returning guest, I guess. And the question is, what have you learned outside of Bitcoin since your last appearance?
What have I learned outside of Bitcoin? Okay. I've been reading the Platonic Dialogues, and I would recommend everybody read that. Maybe not the Republic. That's a lot to bite off, but just go read 1 or 2 of them. They're not very long. It's pretty profound, I would say. And also, read the Gospel of Christ. If you haven't ever read the 4 books of the Gospels, I think that reading the Platonic Dialogues and the Gospels it's a wonderful process. That's what I would say. It's both sides, the mind and the heart. It's changed for me, for sure.
Platonic Dialogues and the Gospel.
Yeah,
I will write that down for myself, like to look at it later.
The eternal classics, like it doesn't get any more classic than that.
Interesting. See how stupid I am. I've never heard about it.
It's Socrates, but Plato wrote all of Socrates' words. And Mark, Luke, and John wrote it wasn't Mark, Luke, and John, but Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They didn't write their own gospels. It was people that followed them that were writing their gospels. But yeah, the story of Christ is incredibly powerful. And I think it has current day relevance also. Always will.
Okay. Plato wrote approximately 35 dialogues, in which most of them Socrates is the main character. Interesting.
Right. Yeah. And if you want to sort through, I didn't actually know there's 35 of them. I've probably read like 5 in detail.
I just Googled it, and the Wikipedia page said that. I don't have no clue if they are 35.
I'm going to read them all though. I'm determined.
It's super interesting. Yeah, there's so much. There are more than average. There are more than average snippets in there from this episode than usually. So thank you so much for bringing us so much knowledge and so many inspirations. As you know, we have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, what's the most terrifying insight that Bitcoin has been giving you about the world or yourself?
Most terrifying insight that Bitcoin has given me about the world or myself? It's a great question. Who asked that question?
Wait, gosh.
No, no rush.
I know
I'm just
it.
stalling. Well, probably once I really understood the gravity of the central banking system and the military industrial complex and the pharmaceutical complex and how all these things interplay and how they cause the trauma that they cause in society. I don't know. Was I terrified? Probably somewhere deep down, I really was terrified because I was so angry. And fear, anger comes from fear. And so, yeah, I probably was absolutely terrified for about a year, but it just expressed itself as anger. I couldn't hardly talk to anybody without mentioning it. So, I was here's the link, right? So, when you're angry, it's because you want to have control over something that you're afraid of, more often than not, maybe all the time. And I was afraid that this thing, this apparatus, this banking cartel, the global cabal, was going to hurt me. It was going to somehow harm me, or that it was somehow going to damage my life or the people that I care about. And it can and it does, and at the same time, it has no sovereignty over me whatsoever. It doesn't, because God's in charge. And all these people with plans, they have all these plans. They think they're going to do this and that, and oh, we're going to win. They're not. They're just not. So yeah, take the white pill.
I remember again the name Ioni Appelberg, and I think you both would be super fun to talk to at the same time. Like I think you both could really dive into very deep topics. I think this could be like a 10-hour podcast.
Was he on just before me?
He was just on before you. Not like I made a almost 2-day break from recording podcasts, so I didn't record anything yesterday. So I recorded about 2 days ago with Ioni Appelberg. So on Wednesday, yes, it was Wednesday.
Nice. Yeah, I love Ioni. We met in Prague. We're buddies. Yeah, he's a good guy. I'll have to listen to his rip when it comes out.
Absolutely, I was really cool. Also that one. And yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. So it's not before I let you go, where can people find you and ask you questions?
Yeah, so sourcenode.xyz is my landing page. That has links to my articles with Bitcoin Magazine. It has my Nostr NPub. I'm not on Twitter. Yeah, find me on Nostr. And if you want, check out the lecture series. It's an audiobook. It's not a podcast, but I published it as a podcast because it was a convenient way to distribute that information.
It's like in some ways, an audiobook is a focused, very long podcast.
Right.
In some ways, but yeah, it's very different. Really, have you seen sorry, that came just in my mind. The Gosling, not Gosling.
Ryan Gosling?
No, not Gosling. This hard,
talking about Blade Runner?
This hard guy, like the that always runs with the. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name.
You're talking about Goggins.
David
yes. Goggins.
David Goggins.
Yeah.
He, in his book, and I heard his book, he made in this audiobook something really fun. He read his book by someone else, and the guy that read the book, so that the reads the book, the guy that reads the book also interviews Goggins in between. And it's like 18 hours or 20 hours long, and it's so good. Like I loved it because it's not only gives you the book, but then also commentary from the author in between. It's like a weird mix between an audiobook and a podcast. And I thought this is the best way possible to do an audiobook, because then
That's
you
cool.
have additional value in the audiobook, not just like the book, because then like if you read the book, like there's actually like a difference in value that you get from like book versus audiobook. And I found that amazing. And if I ever write a book, I have no clue if I actually do, I will do it in the same exact way. I will find someone that asks me about the book and have like in between sessions where like there's like a half-hour podcast every time after a section.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that idea. I listened to an audiobook recently that had an interview with the author at the end, but I haven't listened to his. I might check that out.
Yeah, really, really cool. Then, yeah, thank you so much, Sourcenode, for being on. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.
This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.